our structure doesn't make it easy when it's all like weighted scale voting and attendance and everything. It's a little bit.
We are good for a quorum. We just do not have. Oh no, we are good.
Good for everything? Okay, we are good to go.
So who do we have in attendance, Krista, thus far?
We have Adam Cowie, Matt Dahl, Mayor Bott, Jen Gale, Kim Sorensen, Robin Meekum, Lacey Smith, Bob Barnhill. Oh, and Lindsay Neeson, she joined.
Fremont?
Lindsay Neeson with Tremonton.
Okay.
Nesson,
then,
but yes, Tremont.
Nesson? Okay.
Yes, Nesson.
And then in the room here, I have Roger, myself, and Jake, and then Nicole and Jason are also joining us.
Okay, so it looks like we're just missing Mayor Anderson from Cedar Hills and then Evo from West Valley.
Efo just joined. Efo just joined. So
Okay.
we're just
good.
missing Mayor Anderson.
Okay, thank you.
We're good to go. You have the live stream. Okay.
Okay, live stream is good to go. Ready to go.
Very good. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time. Sorry, I got F-35s flying over me here for a minute. I can't hear you. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for a Utopia meeting this morning. Our desire is to move through the agenda expeditiously, but also to respond to any questions or concerns or suggestions that any of you on the board may have. So hope you're well in your cities and in your homes and families. So the first item on the agenda is a approval of minutes from the February 9th, 2026 meeting. Be happy to entertain a motion to approve those or to make any necessary adjustments.
This is Mayor Bott, Alex. I move to approve.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second, Matt Dahl, Midvale
Okay,
City.
thank you. Thank you, Matt. All in favor to approve the minutes from the February 9th, 2026 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? Okay, very good. Thank you. Next item is consideration of a resolution 2601 that would provide for the adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal year 2027 and for the setting of a time and place for public hearing regarding that budget, the final adoption of the budget. And that date is proposed as June 8th of 2026. So Jason, I believe you're going to present some background on that item.
Yes. Let me share my screen really quick here. Okay, I'm happy to present the Utopia fiscal year 2027 executive budget for your review and comments. If you have any comments as I'm going through this, feel free to ask them at any time and I will answer them. First thing we're going to look at is operating revenues, what's budgeted for Utopia. We've got a few of the lines here. The one that we're mainly going to be focusing on in this budget here is the UIA related payments line, the second to the bottom line here. The top line's just total revenue for everything. The second line there, that's UIA related payments. And there's certain things that we have payments for that we'll talk about. I think I have that slide in here. I didn't see if that slide did make it in here, but it talks about charges from UIA from Utopia to UIA and what they charge for services. We've had to recommend an increase in those charges going from Utopia to UIA because of some expense issues that we've seen this year, and we'll discuss those more in this budget presentation. But right now we're looking at about a $3.5 million increase in UIA related payments coming in. And most of this is due to expense growth. There's probably about 800,000 that's related to regular growth. And the remaining like 2.6 is due to expense growth at Utopia that we need to cover. If we look here, just one slide on expenses, just showing kind of a pie chart of where our operating and expenses and debt service sit. The two big colors you see there are salaries and benefits, and blue and debt service payments. They're both about a third of the budget if you look at those right now. And then the remaining is everything else we have going on with network support, city loan repayments, and construction management, administrative costs, what you're seeing there. They're fairly similar to last year as far as the pie chart goes. Here's some detail of some operating expenses that we're proposing in the budget. These three are all individual lines. There's no combined lines here, but the big increases we're seeing are in network support is increasing quickly, along with administrative cost. The network support and administrative costs we've been talking about these. A lot of this has to do with operating and maintenance cost and relocating cost. They're increasing quickly. This is more difficult to see when you look at the overall budget that I provided in the packet, and that's because, especially if you're looking at network support looks pretty flat from 26 to 27 if you look just at budget changes year over year. But we had a one-time project in fiscal year 2026 for $1.7 million that was shown in network support. That was to replace some of our servers. That was 100% grant funded. So I've removed that from this line to show we are seeing increased costs for maintenance and relocation, and they are significant. And if you look at these lines, we have proposed salary of benefit increase of about $2 million. Administrative cost and network support, both of those are mainly related to maintenance items, maintenance and relocation items that fall into different buckets going in there. But that 1.8 million is primarily maintenance and relocation related.
And we would love it if the cities would stop approving construction, and that would be really helpful for our budgets. It's hit us especially bad, and you're probably seeing it in other ways at the cities of just a lot of construction going on, and we also are outside of the cities too, so a lot of our backbone routes and other things get hit with road projects and development where our lines are in the way, or for road expansion it needs to be put to the side. It's been a lot more over the last couple of years than we've ever seen. We didn't necessarily budget enough for it in some previous years, so we thought maybe we'd have a one-time that hit us bad, but now we're seeing maybe this is the new norm. It's a little bit of a crystal ball based on guessing at how much construction is going to be in conflict with where our lines are at. But it's probably safe to assume it's going to be bad, at least for the next year or so. So it is a significant increase compared to where we were a few years ago.
Roger, this is, and Jason, this is DJ. Is there anything like coordinatively with the city planners of these member cities, especially Brigham, where we're looking to really have exponential growth here in the next little while, to better coordinate that, to head off those types of overlaps in charges or redos? Obviously nobody's thought about it, and it's an operational type of a thing, but I'm just wondering if there can be better coordination.
I mean, the coordination has been decent. It's just at the end of the day, if something gets developed and it's like, hey, here's the open trench for the new utility, and you got to move over to this. We still have a lot of work to put the new lines into the new utility path and then cut off the old, and because we're basically having to rebuild the section. The coordination is helpful because it's better than building it from scratch, because we're having to drill in a new path. But it's still very expensive to move a fiber line, because we have to, like, the splicing expenses are very expensive. So I don't know that there's more that can be done other than, there's times when expenses are reimbursable. So, at times there's a developer coming in and we say, hey, as a developer, if you're going to develop this property and we have to relocate, we can impose them with the expenses of the relocation. Those ones aren't the ones that are really killing us. That's happening and that coordination works. The ones that are killing us are non-reimbursable relocations. And those are often road projects. I'm trying to think of what else there is. Other utility lines that are being moved that are in conflict with ours. So, like a sewer expansion project or things like that. And I don't know that there's, again, I'm like, the easy solution is to stop doing that stuff, but that's not realistic. So it's kind of just proportionate to the amount of development that's going on. And right now, obviously, Utah is experiencing a development boom. And that it's kind of one of the negatives that happens as a result of that. So we have people that do, reach out to cities to coordinate as much as we can. I think our cities have been good to work with. I'm not seeing problems there. It's just the reality of the again, the construction boom that we're experiencing in Utah that hits us on the expense side of things.
Well, if I could impose, if in the Utopia, in those operations, and that if you have any ideas of what Mayor Bott can do as far as policy for planning to help with that moving forward, if you'll shoot me an email or tell Nicole and she can get it back to us. I'd love to be able to make it so we're not spending money twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably spending the same money, but where it gets spent, I mean, it'd be like something that we would love is if, it's a city project, we'd love for the city to reimburse us for the expense we incur, but then that's hitting your expense, and that's probably not what you want. So, and especially if you took that on, then you probably would be taking it on for other providers like Comcast and Lumen and others, and so like it would hurt you more than it would hurt us. So in most cases, I'd probably say from a city perspective, it's probably in your best interest that we do incur those costs when it's a city project. I hate to say that because it kind of hurts us, but to do it the other way, if the cities are having to reimburse all the broadband providers for relocate expenses, that's going to benefit the other companies too, and actually make it more expensive for the city than it would cost us to do our own.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I hate that it makes sense, but that makes sense.
Yeah, and these costs we're talking about here, they're not, if you develop a greenfield site and we're moving to the greenfield site, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if there's some sort of road construction, some sort of new construction, you're improving something, that can get very quickly, that can get very expensive very quickly. Also, just general related line cuts. Usually, I mean, we always go after contractors for those, but there's always some risk trying to collect those. It's not the funnest process, but there is some risk when it comes to just general construction in the city.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily like, here's the properties that's being developed, but as you're adding all these properties, you're like, oh, we've got to upsize a sewer line or increase the road or whatever. And it's that stuff back there where we have existing lines. That relocation expense for those utility projects and road projects that's what's killing us.
I gotcha.
We love the open trench new development though. In the neighborhood where the new stuff's going in, that is generally very good for us. But
Yeah.
Moving forward, the next couple slides are talking about employees. Starting off, as you notice, there was a large increase in employee costs there. And this is kind of a year-over-year look at what we're proposing for employee count. Just what to see off of this slide is mainly there's a net increase of 9 positions. It's 10 new positions, but 1 open position that was not filled. In the budget that I sent, it does have explanations for each of these positions and why they're wanted and what they would do. This next slide shows kind of the cost impact. And I'll turn time over to Roger to go over and explain what he's looking at here.
So this is a tough one. Obviously, financially, new position sets us back and it's expensive to add positions. We're not going in here saying, hey, we just like to add positions. This is a result of a lot of work, and we've been pretty lean on our increases in previous years. The biggest piece of this is you'll see there's a network maintenance team, and this isn't, while it kind of appears these are new positions, these offset other positions that we would be asking for instead because of network growth primarily. This was, I would say the last couple of years have been our biggest years for network growth and subscriber growth. And we can't just obviously expand and grow and add subscribers without incurring work and needs operationally. But this is a little bit of a different approach in that we're creating a dedicated and specialized maintenance team to do, maintenance sounds like it's not much, but it's the power systems, it's the network systems, it's the fiber routes, a lot of the systems where we've maybe fallen behind a little bit on keeping things up to standards. And what's happened is we've been a little too lean in that our technicians, network engineers have fallen behind with some of this work. And we're continuing to grow at the same time. So it's not that they're not going to be able to catch up. And I think that's the conclusion that we have come to, and then rather than just add to those teams, to have a dedicated team to those types of maintenances, of making sure our hut facilities, our switches, the redundancy of fiber paths, that stuff is getting taken care of as a dedicated team. Is where we're at. So if it weren't this network maintenance team, it would be asking for a network engineer and an extra field technician or things like that. With that, this is still a big ask, and we know that. Proportionate to the number of staff that we have, it's like, well, and to the number of customers, it's in line. But we are always trying to improve our efficiency, and most years we're able to do that. We're saying, hey, we're added this much revenue and this much customer base, but we're not adding nearly or proportionate to the number of positions. However, this year, I think we're doing a little bit of catch up. The last couple of years, we had $4 million a year of bond payments coming on every year. It was very difficult to make our budget work without staying very, very lean on our staffing. I love to do that. I wish we could do that every year. But this one, we're just like, there are some struggles and some things that are impacting our network reliability if we're not addressing them, especially with this network team. And overall, we've just identified some need for some of these other positions. We've taken on more projects. For example, we talk about the UEN project of I guess we haven't brought it up in this meeting, but we had I think it was about 280 sites awarded on contract with the UEN, which is the Utah Education Network, for schools and libraries and educational facilities. It's a huge project. We won more sites than we've ever won in the past, and we won more sites than all of the other providers in the state combined this year. But that's 280 projects that need to be managed with switch upgrades or installations or whatever. And so it's a $2.5 million build project with lots of sites, with $5 million of plus revenue associated with it. It's a great project, but it's a lot of work above and beyond what we're normally doing. And that's just one example. We've been doing very well with adding subscribers on businesses and other things. And we're like, just the volume of growth has increased. That all does really well, especially in the long run, because we get more customers on there. But in the short run, it's like, crud, we're taking on some pretty significant administrative costs with these positions. So with that, we believe these positions are needed. We've vetted them, we've argued, we've negotiated, internally of what are our priorities. There are positions we're not approving to get to this list. But again, I feel like some of these we probably are already behind the game on and probably should have been hired in previous budget years. And we're cutting it a little bit lean. With that, our budget is still able to support these positions, as well as the payment to cities with a proposed increase, like we've been doing. I don't want to do this every year. I think in future years, we could probably get this a little more lean for incremental growth. But we're kind of in a position of identifying that we do need to hire these. And so this is our proposal for staffing for the next year. I could talk to these individually, but each one has an explanation. I think, did you say, Jason, that was provided in the packet, wasn't it? or not? Maybe
What the
not.
position does, yeah.
Okay. So there's a little more detail there. But yeah, I mean, this is, yeah, anyways, I open to questions on this. If anyone wants to go into more detail.
I'm sure you've evaluated this, but is there any opportunity to outsource any of these positions?
So generally, we have been trending a little bit towards insourcing more because we've found that a lot of our external costs are killing us. So we're hoping that we're actually be able to do more work internally versus issuing that out to contractors. A lot of the work we've done in our Hudson facilities, we've issued out to third parties for maintenance. And it's like, if we can, like some of these will save us money because we won't need to be as dependent on contractors for some of this work.
Okay.
So I mean, we don't want to do everything, and we still do construction with contractors and engineering. But these specific things I actually believe to be cost saving as we insource some of that work versus depend on third party contractors. But it shows up a little more extreme on a staffing line than it does on a third party contractor line. But we spend way more money on third party contractors. I'd love to shrink that if we can save money. I mean, we've insourced entire teams. We used to do all of our locating with a third party, and we insourced that. That was one that it's like based on our volume and network expansion, you know, we're going to need to increase that team. We don't have a position here for a locator, but we've saved money overall by insourcing a lot of functions when we identify that the third party contractors are charging too much, and then we could do it more efficiently in-house.
So Jason, at the beginning of your slides, you had a pie chart that showed it was 30, I think it was 33% of the expenditures were wages and salaries. Does that change with this approval, or is that with this, that includes this?
That's with this. If you
Okay.
look at last year's pie chart, I think it was 31%.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's
or 33.
and there's really two big buckets of administrative expense here, or salaries and benefits that are hitting this. And one is just the typical cost of living and merit increase being proposed. And there's the additional positions. So those together, it's pretty significant. But at the same time, you know, trying to be competitive, trying to make sure our network's in good shape, and we don't, you know, we're not putting anything in here that isn't needed. But also, I think we are still running a good budget, and actually a pretty conservative budget on revenues and things. That's mostly at UIA. But we do have revenue growth at Utopia. You know, we have the Bountiful Project, Idaho Falls. Those revenues are all at Utopia, and they've been growing very well. So, but we're also billing to UIA fees, and that's part of the discussion for today. But yeah, I do support these positions. Again, I don't feel like any of these are frivolous or unneeded. These are each one of these, I think, could be justified and defended pretty well. But I'm happy to have those more in-depth discussions, or even offline if you didn't want to have it in the board meeting. But yeah, our network has grown quite a bit. You know, as we get into subscriber growth and things like that, we're just like we have added a lot of revenue. We've added a lot of customers. Again, we can't continue to grow forever and not have the staffing to support that. But at the same time, we are getting better financially every year as a result of our growth and expansion, while paying down bonds and also increasing the payments to cities. So we're in whole, it's a very good direction and path that we're on.
Real well, I guess as I've kind of talked about every year, probably since I've been on here, that increasing that distribute the city loan repayment, or the increasing the amount that goes to the cities is been a priority for me. I recognize too with the growth, and I hear everything you're saying, and I do think you have kept staffing pretty lean. but we'll also have sort of had the discussion about, as we're, experiencing all this growth in the new revenues, I want to make sure that we are thinking about how to help some of the cities out with increasing that even further. I think, what is the number? 6.63% this year increase is what it looked like. And so as we talk about the growth, which is awesome, but then all of the, this additional cost and all the staffing comes up, and there's a 33% increase in that staffing, or sorry, in the wages and benefits and all that, and just a 6.63% increase back to the cities. That's something I'd like to have, I guess, some further discussion. I'm not saying any of those positions aren't needed, but is it something where, they can come on in a staggered period of time, opening up more money to provide additional funding for repayment to the cities? Is it something we have to budget 100% throughout the year? I would like to have some more discussions about that and how to increase that amount going back to the cities. And I think I've said that 4 times now, so I probably repeated myself more than I need to. Anyway, that's where my thoughts are and concerns are. And I want to make sure that as we are getting that growth, and especially as I think some of the cities are hitting leaner periods of times right now, or at least Midvale is, increasing that amount going back to the cities would be tremendously helpful. Thanks.
I have to say, this is Robin from Centerville. I agree with everything he said. I'm kind of concerned that we're getting that many more employees where we're not increasing what's coming back to the cities. I just don't want to see us decide to grow more than, there is an obligation to be paid to the cities.
So Kim with Murray City, I echo those thoughts as well on both of what you've said. The other thing that I struggle with is, I understand the need for new employees. I think all of the cities are going lean with hiring new employees because of cost. What I do focus on a little bit is I think you said we're going from 31% to 33% in cost of employees. I'd like to see us maintain the percentage that we've maintained for whatever the last few years are. I know we're going to talk about COLAs as well, and I think Murray's always been one that struggles with giving Utopia employees a higher COLA than we're giving our own city. So just my thought.
Our methodology with the COLA has generally been to just be in line with where the cities are. Some are higher, some are lower. I would say generally we see that demand and pay rates in the broadband industry outpaced where cities are at, especially in recent years, because there's been a big influx of grant money through the BEAD program. It's a $50 billion federal program that's really pushed things in this industry. Despite that, we're not asking even at the top of where the cities are. We're in line, like we're less than some, higher than others, which we think is an appropriate place to be. We acknowledge our ownership and the leadership here from the board, and don't want to be a problem for you financially or politically, but where we're hiring and what our increases look like. We talk about more of that, but that's where we peg our COLA and merit increases at. Again, we do acknowledge this is a big ask from a staffing perspective, but we're also in a very aggressive growth mode, right? We are, these positions are both to kind of take care of some of the maintenance items, but also to support growth. I don't think necessarily the cities are in growth mode they're not in the same industry where we're trying to go out there and increase not just our revenue, but our rate of revenue growth. And these positions, while, especially the project manager and construction managers, these things are aimed at supporting growth of the system, which then pays for itself and then some. We wouldn't need these positions if we stopped growing, right? But the growth of the system and the growth of the revenues, especially when it exceeds expenses, puts us in that position, to Matt's point, to be able to pay more towards bonds. I know Jason has a chart that kind of shows that we're ahead of where we had originally projected the goal of Utopia and UIA to be able to address debt. where we took a pretty big step forward a few years back, and then have maintained the annual increase that the cities are paying on the bonds is 2% of the total bond amount. And we've been able to continue to pay an increased amount plus that 2% on this trajectory line of what we had originally forecasted. But these positions, again, enable us to do that. If we weren't growing our revenues, we wouldn't be able to do more every year. So it's a delicate balance, right? In the short term, we could probably pinch some pennies by cutting some positions. But if that's at the expense of growing our revenues and profitability, which then helps us support increased payments back to the cities, then we have a short-term win, but a long-term hit. Our approach has been to do a little bit of both, right? We could grow more aggressively if we weren't paying towards increasing payments to the cities every year, but we want to maintain that, and that's been a very important goal of the board and the organization to at least cover the 2% increases every year on the original bonds. But we also want to grow revenue and get us in a long-term position to cover more of that in future years. The recent years have been very tight because we had especially large bond payment expenses coming in, but that gets better over time. And 2040 is when the bonds get completely paid off for the original Utopia and UIA bonds. Things get extremely interesting those years, but we still have a little time before we get there. Anyways, this is time for your discussion. I'm sorry to ramble too much, but we definitely want to hear discussion from the board and thoughts on that. That's kind of the balance where we try to gauge our hiring and payment and budget decisions.
Roger, this is Jen Gale from Orem. And I appreciate this discussion, and I'm so new to this Utopia that I'm not even sure I know what I don't know, but specifically relating to this discussion about hiring, is there a way to quantify that, if we hire X, it will allow us to produce Y in revenue so that we can get a better sense of the connection between, hiring and revenue realization? Further, I think I agree with you in that I think we don't want to starve our system. If we're underfunding it, I think it will underperform, and that will hurt us in the long run.
It's tough to put numbers to the revenue to these positions. I mean, we might be able to do kind of a high level. There's definitely some that are like, these are tied to growth. These are tied to maintenance. Some of this is catch up, right? And it's like some of the outages that we've had, overall, we have a very reliable system, but there's definitely been some outages that were preventable outages because of maintenance that wasn't being kept up on. And so it's like, those hurt us. And if those continue or even get worse, those do eventually turn into credits to customers. And even worse than credits to customers is cancellations of customers. And, does that happen, right? It's like we're following social media and it's like, yeah, here's people complaining about an outage in this city or this neighborhood. And it's like, yeah, system-wide, we've been incredibly reliable, but we do have, there's been battery failures or power systems, cooling systems that had been identified that, on a calendar and we can get to it. We don't have enough technicians or engineers to get out there and fix some of these things. So it's hard because it's like, what's the dollar impact of some future outage of unknown scope and size? So I don't know. Maybe we could take some guesses at it, but again, these are ones we know either help us maintain customers or help us grow customers, and really these are all for the most part targeted at that. Maybe not the analyst position. That's just one where we have some need of more data and reporting for forecasting and things like that. It helps us on the business side and attacking, revenue opportunities. But I mean, I guess there is a revenue potential there if we're getting more customers and partnerships out there from the analyst. So I don't. That's a tough ask. We could probably take some guesses at things that might be helpful.
Roger, this is DJ. That's a great question that these positions aren't sales positions; these are maintenance. So if there's any quantitative profitability there, it would be in the retention of customers, in my mind. Not so much new customers, other than word of mouth and the ability to market the uptime of the network and limited downtime. But uh, what I foresee as the advantage of this approach is that we're moving forward with that marketability of the network. If these were sales positions, then it'd probably be easier to quantify, how much money or how many more sales we could bring in. But I agree with Roger; it's difficult. I'm in support of the presentation. I think that the healthier, the faster we can get out there, the less we have to come back and reclaim customers because they've left because of an outage or because the network is down. That's just my opinion, though.
I think to add to that, thank you for your comments, Mayor Bott, and the rest of them as well, is I think it's important to remember that the history and reputation of the Utopia network is that it is reliable. It's vibrant, reliable, has significantly less downtimes than some of the private sector operations. And because of that, I think people have confidence in it, as has been spoken about. I think it's important to remember that the goose that lays the golden eggs for all of us ultimately is the success of the network. And I agree that we need to be frugal and responsible in hiring the positions, but this exact issue has come up several times over the years, through many years. In fact, particularly at times when revenue streams in individual cities were impacted by either internal decisions or external forces. And so there's always been a constant play, at least in the past, and I certainly support it continuing, is the idea that the primary focus has to be on the network and the viability and the success of the network, because that's what generates the long-term revenue stream that will allow the cities to be paid back in a significant way. I think an example of this that's right before us, we just talked about today, is the fact that I may misremember the numbers, Roger, but we have a new contract for over $5 million with UEN for 250 plus new sites. That doesn't happen if Utopia doesn't have that reputation of being again, a vibrant network that has low downtimes, et cetera, et cetera. So we wouldn't have those relationships with, I don't think, with Bountiful and with the Idaho folks and Montana folks and potentially California folks, if that was not our reputation. So I think there's a lot of things that play into this. The other thing I'd say is I think the history proves that the staff has been pretty effective in generating revenue sufficient to cover these kinds of costs as they come up. Again, we want to be frugal because it is a significant commitment. It always has been for years and years and years to be as aggressive as we can, responsibly be, in pushing money back to the cities to assist them and repay them for some of the contributions that were made years ago. So I think it's a great discussion. Thank you.
This is Efo Pili. Roger, I appreciate the information. I also appreciate the discussion as well. Typically when I look at new hires or new FTEs, I go through a process. I mean, there's two separate discussions here. I think one, you discuss the if we should hire, if we should increase our FTE count, and then the other discussion is when. And so I trust that you've done your due diligence, and I appreciate the information that talks about the if. I mean, there's no doubt that you feel like we should move forward. So my comments are more directed toward the when. So when I look at when, I like to go through a process. First, as been discussed, I'd like to look at whether or not this could be contracted, and then if the due benefit costs there If not, then we move on to, could this be part-time? Could we hire part-time individuals where benefits aren't necessarily, we can factor in benefits? If not, and if it is a full-time position, then could we look at phasing this? Could we hire maybe halfway in the year, right? So that we can look at costs, right? So we can maintain, someone mentioned maintaining that 30%. So you only have half the cost for this year and you push it off to the next year. So that's kind of the process I'm hoping we can also go through as we look at this. A lot of times when, even in my city, when department heads come to me for FTE increases, I trust that they've done they're not going to ask me for something they don't need. But so it really, most of the time, it really isn't a matter of if, it's when, and how we can move this, how we can push this off maybe 1 to 2 years so that we can level out that spike in costs, so we can help manage it, more on a stable line or trajectory. That's just, I don't know if that's a question or more of a comment, but that's kind of like, that's where I hope we're looking at, Roger, just in-house as you're going through this.
Yeah, that's great comments. We do that. There's a lot of discussion of, is this either saving us money or is this growing money, and is the timing now for this? And to Alex's point, this UEN project is a pretty good one, and we're already working on that project. But that's one example of many. We're building. We have a lot of projects. There's a lot of maintenance items that aren't money making, but we're required legally to do and don't get reimbursed for. So that's like the construction manager one. It's like, well, yeah, that doesn't make us so much money, but we have to manage these relocation projects as a requirement. So they're not necessarily like, oh, hey, this makes money or saves us money, so therefore if it doesn't check those boxes, we can get rid of it. But taking other resources and allocating it to this, if we didn't hire it, then takes us away from revenue opportunities. So it's a balancing of a lot of priorities. I think, like, I'm very open to more details about what these people are doing. There is more detail and description in the packet for these, but even just from a timing and day-to-day perspective, we could talk more about these. I guess I'm curious what format or next steps, because this is a preliminary budget, and we would approve a final in June. So, I mean, potentially it's going offline and having some conversations with some of you one-on-one, or even in some, I don't know what other avenue to use there, to go into more of a deep dive on the justification for these. But I'm, definitely would defend the idea that these have been vetted. We've had a lot of discussions in our budgetary process internally about, hey, here's the 4 positions you want in your department, but you just can't justify those, and the timing's not right. And it's the result of that, whittling those requests down to these is where we're at today. So this is not like the preliminary, like this is everything that was requested. There's not everything that's requested. These are the positions that either save customers, grow customers, or we have a legal requirement to keep up with. But at the same time, our current position is that we are growing very, very fast, which is good for us, because that is the revenue we're using to make the next year's bond payments and make the payment back to the cities with the increase that's proposed. I worry that by not supporting aggressive growth in and outside of our cities, as we have been, and as this slate here supports, that may not be maintained in the future, right? Like, we're always watching that. Like, we got to make that, we're up to, well, I don't think we've shown the proposed dividend, or not, I hate to call it dividend, repayment to the cities, but that, it's a pretty significant increase every year as we up that. And as we get closer to 2040, again, things get very interesting. But even holding the line and making the bond payments as the payments increase every year is really putting us in a really good long-term position. So again, I guess the ask is, is it sufficient if we say from this meeting to between now and the next meeting, we'll have some conversations with you as board members individually to go through this list? Is that sufficient? And then maybe we kind of allocate that strategically into the final budget.
Move on because it might.
Roger, what I would suggest that you send out, based on the legitimate questions and concerns, to send out maybe in a written form to each of the board members, an explanation and background on the positions and why, the justification for them. And then if those cities have an interest in having a dialogue about that or still have questions or concerns, they can reach out to you between the next meeting, before the June meeting, when the final budget is adopted. So I think it's also, again, because it's ultimately a board decision, it might be a bit presumptuous if anybody's feeling this, that any savings here will automatically flow to the cities in the dividend, or right in the repayment. So I think that would be a separate discussion. So I'm not suggesting it. People are viewing it that way, but I think that would.
Yeah, Alex, if I could, I would agree with that. The cost increases here do have some consequences with our bond rating in the long term. I mean, looking at where our bond rating is right now, it's fine with this budget. It's not going to change. We're not going to get a negative outlook or anything like that, we don't think. But I was hoping for a bond rating increase within the next, let's say 3 to 5 years. This would set us back a year or two, probably, on a bond rating increase. So we'd want to have a financial discussion on that too.
Sorry, there's definitely a lot to unpack in everything that was just said. That making changes would impact the bond rating. I think the other board members had a lot of good points with regards to employees. I also want to say, I started this conversation, I still am interested in how we can turn the growth into larger contributions to the or dividends to the cities at this point. I recognize that just because we make a change here, it may go somewhere else, but also we're talking about the employees. I started the conversation here, but if it's in another part of the budget that we need to talk about, we can do that too. I'm not just saying it all has to come from here. The other thing is, there's been a lot of discussion today during this about challenges with the networks and outages and battery flaws and some other stuff that was mentioned. And I've been trying to rack my brain as been going through this of like how much we've had information provided about the outages and where the network is not operating it up to our standards. And so I think that's some information I'd like to have too. I know we get a lot of growth information and a lot of that kind of stuff, but if there's like a map or some way that we could talk about where these folks will be going, where we're seeing problems in the network. I know we talked about air conditioners in the past and some of that kind of stuff, but that would be some information that would be interesting to me, and I think would also help with some of this conversation as well.
Yeah, on our website, we do publish our outages, and usually there is some explanation as the cause of the outage. Is it a fiber cut? Is it a power issue? Is it a device failure or something like that? So there's some there, but we don't have like a more comprehensive report that we've come back to the board with, but we could probably format some reliability reporting that would be a good, like a packet chart.
So it's just, these are things that happen, but not necessarily like anywhere where there's a part of the network where the frequency of issues is increasing or anything like that.
No, I mean, whenever we know there's problems or there's some sort of trending, we will put a focus there. What happens is that we're probably a lot more reactive to outages and problems versus being proactive and getting in ahead of them so that they never happen. And so that's a little bit of the purpose, or a lot of the purpose of this network maintenance team, is to identify those problems before they become an outage.
I see.
So our response times are good. When there is an outage, we've got the people, we get on them, we fix them, we do a good job. And I'd say that we're already, delivering, an industry, good or, an A. But we've always, especially, my background has been in network design and engineering. And, it's like I take a lot of pride in the reliability of our network. And when it's not delivering, I want to improve that. It's one thing to have the reliability that's good enough for residential services, but to Alex's point, our ability to deliver a superior service has helped us get into the schools, has helped us get into public safety, it's helped us get into more critical connections. We're now often used by the state of Utah itself, even in connections like their data center for the state. We have 400 gig circuits with the school system for their backbone, which is some of the biggest connections in the state. We have to support that type of reliability. And so it's like, it's good, but it's also bad, right? We have to have a higher standard for the reliability of our network to be eligible for those. And they're very high dollar circuits. But there's a cost that, we have to be better on the reliability of our system in order to be eligible for those. It isn't a residential grade network. It's a carrier class network, but the residential customers benefit from that because we do deliver a more reliable system than the other residential systems out there.
Okay.
All right, so I think I've got direction to provide a lot more detail on this and send that out to the board. And then we can address questions maybe more fully as a result of that. Am I hearing that direction correctly?
Yeah, I think that's the best, Roger. And then we can certainly, if there needs to be additional discussion in the next board meeting, when the adoption of the final budget is proposed, we could certainly do that as well. But I think that would be helpful and allow for that interchange of thoughts and ideas and suggestions to take place outside of this meeting at this point. Okay, Jason.
If that's the case, I'll continue on with my presentation. Okay. Next slide here. Salaries and benefits per folks, COLA and merit. We had a lot of discussion on this last year. Every year we ask cities what they're putting in their tentative budgets. And this is the responses. We got 8 responses this year. They're shown. Last year we talked about how we decide what to do for our COLA and our merit. And I was told to, if our total increase that we're projecting is equal to or more than the change in the CPI for the Western states, for the Western area, I can't remember what it's called, it's Western something, then make that your COLA. And that's what I've done here. We have a total of a 4% increase proposed. I looked at the change for the calendar year 2025 change in CPI from December to December, and it was 2.9%. And then we would be proposing that for a COLA and a merit increase of 1.1%. We think that's pretty much in the range of what the other cities that responded to this are putting in their tentative budgets. Next thing here, I put the management fee kind of to talk about, this is a fee that was charged for administrative services, and it's kind of like an admin fee, but it's got a few more things in there that's charged to UIA from Utopia. This is increasing by 17% this year. It's primarily due to salary related things happening in the admin and finance and some of the other shared departments. And if we look here, there's one other slide that I do want to show really quick. I'm sorry, I didn't end up getting it in here somehow, but I do have it ready to go. So hold on. We talked a little bit about the increase of the fee for that's going to be charged to Utopia for service. charge to UIA from Utopia for services provided. And this is the service contract between Utopia and UIA. If we look at it, what's being proposed right now, the way Utopia gets money from UIA is primarily through this service contract. And what we're seeing is that there's for network operations, we charge for each active connection a fee monthly. For provisioning, we charge a fee for every time we connect a new customer, just a one-time fee. For field maintenance, we charge a fee for each address passed, and this is used to take care of like our relocate cost and our maintenance cost for breaks and things like that, because we think that's driven by the number of miles of the network. And then electronic shelter maintenance fee, we charge a certain amount per month for each UIA HUD or cabinet is charged from Utopia to UIA. The proposed increase in the budget would be an increase of about 8.8% for network operations for each active connection. And the big increase we're proposing here is for field maintenance. And it would go from 143 to 213 for each address pass. That's about a 49% increase. And this is to cover mostly the relocation cost and the maintenance costs we've been talking about in our board meetings this year. And we got to have revenue to cover that. And the one place we have it to cover it from is from UIA. But that shows you a total budget increase of about $2.6 million in total fees collected. About 700,000 of that or so would be related just from growth at UIA. That's just the amount of additional money we would get from growth that they have coming in the next year. The remaining 1.9 million would be from the fee increase.
Yeah.
And going back to this budget and presentation, sorry, I didn't get that in. What was our question?
I've seen some people saying they're going to have to drop off, and I know we need to. Is there a reason we should just approve this tentative budget before people drop off, and then we can even go back through and continue talking about it? Sorry.
Well, I'm fine with that. The only other thing I have to go through is the payments to the cities and how they're going up 318,000 a year. But yeah, if you want to do the approval first, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think that's probably, given the time commitment some people have, I think that would be wise. So any concern from any member of the board to do that? Go ahead and adopt the tentative budget.
Just really
Alex,
quick, Jason,
go ahead.
can you just explain how did you come up with the percent increase on the distribution to the cities? Is that something that's set by a resolution, or is this just looking at revenues and seeing how we can do things?
It would be set by resolution with the final budget is how it's going to work. And basically how I did it is I said, well, if costs have gone up.
Hold on. There were two different things. You got the payment between Utopia and UIA. That's by resolution. The payment OpEx or this increase of payment back to the cities is not by resolution. That's just a budget item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Which one are you asking about, Adam?
Sorry, this one that you've got displayed now, the repayment to the cities, just something that may accommodate some of the concerns that have been expressed. Perhaps just a thought, perhaps we could look at in the future a resolution saying our target is whatever, 3%
Don't do that.
or 5%.
I'm actually going to cover that on the next two slides.
Okay.
But if we need to do an approval first,
Yeah.
I had anticipated that, and I was going to talk about methodology.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
But we need a quick vote on the budget, and we need a quick vote on the public hearing.
Yeah. So again, I'm happy to entertain a motion on those two items, the adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal year 2027, as well as setting the date and time, the time and place, excuse me, of the public hearing regarding the final budget adoption. And I think the proposal is that date should be Monday, June 8th, 2026 at 10 a.m., which would be part of our normal schedule. So if you want to include that in the motion, that'd be great. Be happy to entertain a motion.
This is Adam. I'll move to approve the tentative budget for this coming fiscal year.
This is Kim. I'll second that.
Okay, and I'll take that to include the time and place of the final public hearing as well.
Yes.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Leighton is an aye. Adam,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Councilmember Gale,
Yes.
Mayor Bott.
DJ's and I.
Okay. Efo,
Yes.
Councilmember Meekum,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
She had to drop off.
Okay, Bob Barnhill, Murray.
Yeah.
Murray, thank you. And then I don't think Mayor Anderson got on, did she?
No.
Okay, and then how about Lindsay from Tremont?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
It appears to be unanimous. Thank you. Okay, do you want to continue? Should we move on to the setting a place and time for the public hearing for the amendments to the 2026 budget before we lose quorum as well?
What?
You do that. Just setting for the next one, for the amendment, setting a public hearing for that.
Well, we combined those two in that last motion, didn't we?
It was.
Oh, no, never
hearing
mind.
For the.
Yeah, what-
You're right.
Once for the current amendment to the current budget.
Yeah, you're right. So we need a motion for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do a motion for that quick, and then we can come back and continue the discussion on the tentative budget.
This is DJ. I will move to approve the amended current budget.
Okay, what we'd be doing is setting a public hearing to consider amendments to that, and it would be the same date and time as the previous hearing. It would be on the Monday, June 8th at 10 a.m. Just to clarify, thank you, Mayor.
Yes, and
That's
understood. That's included in my motion then.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Adam.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Again, Leighton is an aye. Adam,
Aye.
Matt,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Councilmember Gale. Maybe she's dropped off. Efo,
Yes.
Councilmember Meekum.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
She had dropped off.
Okay, Bob from Perry
Yes.
and Lindsay from Tremont.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And DJ from Brigham City's and I, even though I made.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, for catching that. Okay, very good. Well, thank you for your time, those that need to drop off. Appreciate your contribution to the discussion today. Was good. So, Jason, let's move back to the previous discussion about the allocation payments, proposed allocation payments to the cities.
Yes. Here's the proposal. It's going up by about $318,750. The way that I came up with this amount is if you look at what the cities are paid, what they paid last year, and it goes up by 2% every year, the 2% is the $318,000 increase. So that's all I'm passing through with this year. But if we look historically a little bit how this has worked and what the thinking was, back in 2017, UIA started to have money to pay back to cities. Now that was paid back through, we had operational loans that had been made, so some was paid back there for the operation assessments. But eventually those got all paid back and it came back against the sales tax pledges. That's where the money's being paid against right now. We decided around 2017 to try to keep that 2% increase to make sure we increase the payments to the cities by that 2% that the bond payment was going up every year. And historically, if you look at the orange line is what we would have paid had we just stuck with the 2% plan from 2017 that was originally put in place. The blue line in 2023, we had more funds available. And the decision was made to increase it from about $2 million a year to double it to almost $4 million a year being paid to the cities, because I thought it was aggressive personally at the time, but we were able to fit it in and we have been able to fit it in since then. That shows the difference between the original plan and what we've done and some efforts that have been made by Utopia, at least in the past, to try to increase that amount. And I know that's still one of our goals for the future. So Adam, I don't know if you're still on.
Yeah. So running that scenario with the blue line, do you have an estimate on when the cities will be fully paid back? How many years would this take?
These payments that are being paid by the cities, we are keeping them on Utopia's books. They show as an amount owed to the cities for a loan. And we are charging monthly interest. We are charging, saying we owe you monthly interest on those amounts in the amount of the PTIF rate. We're taking the monthly PTIF rate and putting that to the loan. So if you look, the back page of the budget that I provided to you shows how the loan to the cities looks over time. And it's a lot of money, and I have no idea how long that would take to pay back. Because we're taking the total payments ever made and saying that's what we need to pay back and making that interest bearing.
Yeah, and that may be a helpful exercise.
I can show you. Do you want me to put it up here really quick?
Well, real
Well,
quick, make a point here. At the end of this 2040, these bonds are paid off. So then there's $10 million plus available from that day, that's not going to bond payments, but that's available to the cities from then on, right?
Yeah. Let me show you, Adam, kind of what we're looking at. It's in the bond document. It's in the packet. So, I mean, we're fine to go look at this. Hold on.
And I don't mean to get too lost in the numbers today, but just for those that have concerns and that are newer on the board, it may be helpful to say, hey, based on this current model, it would take whatever 20 years for us to pay off or pay back all of the cities. And if that's acceptable, that might be a good thing for them to know. But if it's like, you know what, we think this is going to take 80 years, maybe that's not reasonable. And maybe we need to look at something that's more aggressive or an escalating scale.
Adam, I think what it comes down to right now, we're not looking at it as a loan repayment issue to try to do that. That's how big this number is of $246 million at June 30th, 2025. The only payments we're making are the small, $4 to $5 million payments we've been talking about in the budget right now. What we're talking about is how do we lessen the burden of what the cities pay every year right now is kind of how I would look at it, just because this number is so large and will take so long to pay back.
Yeah, I think, again, the position, at least in the past of the board, has always been to make those payments as aggressively as we can, but also to be very responsible in the way that it's done. So my presumption through the years has been that while there may be, like you were doing now, incremental adjustments here and there based on ebbs and flows of revenues and expenditures, the real opportunity for some of those larger amounts to be directed toward the cities and away from the operation of the Utopias as some of that debt drops off. And again, we need to be responsible about that. And it's complicated, as you touched on, Jason, because of the bond rating situation. So there's a lot of factors that play into that. But I certainly think, and the expectation I think is that in the next few years, there will be opportunities to have, this will be a very productive and fruitful discussion, and there could be some larger amounts than has been in the past that are redirected to the cities. But it's got to be well thought through, obviously.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, anything else you need to present on the budget, Jason?
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, do we want to skip the financial update, or do you want to?
I think we could. We basically talked about everything pertinent. I mean, revenues are going up. We're still showing good revenue growth. That's about the only other thing we haven't talked about is how we're January and February. January and February revenue growth were slightly better than we've seen in prior years because of door-to-door sales.
Okay. Are there any board members that object to deferring a more detailed discussion about the financial update, given time constraints? Okay. Hearing none, let's move ahead. Roger, anything we need to provide
on
the
during the broke time, I would just say, you know, we provided reports that show it. The numbers are very good. We've had very good subscriber growth across all of our cities. We've had competitive options come in, but we've weathered that very well and continue to grow take rate. So things are looking very good. But yeah, I just defer to the reports. And if you have any questions on your cities specifically, feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or concerns from the board?
So just for clarification, so you're going to send out some additional information, it sounds like, to the board. Is there any other meetings before the June budget adoption that are planned? If not, because of this discussion, it may be beneficial to have one, just a circle back with the board, especially if there's several that dropped off that may have concerns. And so I just don't want you to run into a problem where those concerns are still prevalent in that final meeting that you've got to adopt your budget. So just something to think about, Roger.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll send it out. We'll see kind of the feedback we get from that, and then maybe ask the question if that warrants a separate meeting or not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Adam. I think I would request at least that for the courtesy of everyone, that if you do have a concern, if any of us do, to make sure we reach out ahead of time so there can be answers provided and not wait till that meeting and indicate it then. So it can be worked through prior to the meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, very good. Thank you again for your time, and it was good discussion today. I think that's how good decisions get made, is through a kind of contest of opinions or back and forth, and it's all done cordially and professionally. And so thank you for that. Be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Adam.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Again, thank you. Have a good day and be safe. We'll stand adjourned.